My parents always said I was just a lowly teacher, like my life was too small to matter. Then a student collapsed. The new wing started failing, and someone slipped evidence into my desk like a warning. I tried to stay quiet until a camera caught me during the evacuation, and a national show asked me to go live. That night, I saw my father watching me, and I knew he recognized the truth I was about to say. The radiator in my classroom hissed like a cornered animal, a rhythmic, wet spitting sound that I had long ago learned to tune out. It was 4 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon in November, and the light outside the frosted windows of Larkridge Central High was already dying, turning from a bruised purple to a flat, indifferent gray. I sat at my desk, a stack of essays on the Great Gatsby waiting for my red pen. But my eyes were fixed on the empty desk in the third row. Leo had not been in class for 3 days. I rubbed the back of my neck, feeling the tension that had taken up permanent residence there. Being an English teacher at 34 years old meant carrying the weight of 150 narratives that were not your own. It meant knowing which student was sleeping in a car, which one was hiding bruises under long sleeves, and which one, like Leo, was simply fading away because the world had convinced him he did not matter. I packed the essays into my canvas tote bag. My day was only half over. I locked the classroom door, the latch clicking with a heavy finality, and walked down the hallway. The linoleum was scuffed and peeling in places, a map of neglect that the district claimed they could not afford to fix. Yet, as I passed the double doors leading to the new East Wing, the smell hit me. It was a sharp, chemical tang, like ammonia mixed with burning rubber. The East Wing was the pride of the school board. They called it the Student Wellness and Opportunity Center. It had been built over the summer by Hallowmere Development Group, a company whose trucks had monopolized the parking lot for 3 months. The wing gleamed with glass and brushed steel, a stark contrast to the brick-and-mortar fatigue of the main building, but the doors were already jamming, and the ventilation system hummed with a vibration that made your teeth ache. I pushed through the exit doors into the biting wind of the parking lot. My car, a 10-year-old sedan that my father liked to call the rattling tin can, started on the second try. I drove 10 minutes south, crossing the invisible line that separated the struggling side of Larkridge from the truly forgotten side. The community center was a converted warehouse, smelling of floor wax and stale coffee. This was my second life, 3 nights a week. I tutored adults who had slipped through the cracks of the system, the same system I worked for during the day. I spent 2 hours with a man named Samuel, a 50-year-old mechanic who was trying to get his certification but struggled with the technical manuals. We went word by word. His hands, stained permanently with grease, shook slightly as he traced the lines of text. "You are a patient woman. Aubrey," he told me as we finished, "it is not patience." "Samuel," I said, "it is just reading. You have done the hard part already." I left the center at 7 in the evening, my stomach rumbling. But I had one more stop. Mrs. Gable lived in the apartment complex next to mine. She was 82, a retired librarian who had put the first copy of To Kill a Mockingbird in my hands when I was 12. Now, her eyes were failing, and her hips were brittle glass. I let myself in with the key she gave me. The apartment smelled of lavender and old paper. I checked her pill organizer. Tuesday was empty. Good, and heated up the soup I had made for her on Sunday. "Aubrey," she called out from her armchair. "Is that you?" "It is me, Mrs. Gable," I said, setting the tray on her lap. "You are working too hard," she said, her voice thin but sharp. "You sound like you are running a race with no finish line." "I am fine," I said, kissing her forehead. "I just want to make sure everyone is taken care of." She gripped my hand. Her skin was like parchment. "You cannot save the world, Aubrey, especially not when you are letting your own parents make you feel like you are nothing." I stiffened. I did not want to talk about my parents. I did not want to think about the dinner invitation waiting for me on Friday. "Eat your soup," I said gently. "I will see you in the morning." Friday night arrived with the inevitability of a storm front. My parents lived in Northgate. The part of Larkridge where the driveways were paved with crushed white stone and the lawns were manicured into submission. The house was a sprawling colonial that always felt cold, no matter how high they cranked the thermostat. I parked my sedan behind my brother's car. Justin drove a sleek, German-engineered machine that cost more than my annual salary. He was 31, a junior vice president at a logistics firm, and the golden child who could do no wrong. I took a breath, checked my reflection in the rearview mirror to make sure I did not look like the exhausted public school teacher I was, and walked to the door. My mother, Lenora, opened it. She was wearing a silk blouse that shimmered under the porch light. Her hair was a helmet of perfect blonde highlights. "Aubrey," she said, offering me a cheek to kiss. "You are late. I am sorry," I said, stepping into the foyer. Traffic on the connector was bad. "We were waiting on you to open the wine." My father's voice boomed from the living room. Graham Barnes sat in his leather armchair, a tumbler of scotch in his hand. He was a large man who took up space unapologetically. He had spent 40 years in commercial real estate, building a reputation as a man who knew everyone and owed nothing. "Hello, Dad," I said. He looked me up and down, his eyes lingering on my off-the-rack dress. "You look tired." "Aubrey, are you eating enough? Or is a teacher's salary not enough for groceries these days?" "I eat fine." "Dad," I said, keeping my voice level. Justin walked in from the kitchen, holding a bottle of expensive red wine. "Hey, Aubrey, good to see you." He smiled, and it was the easy, confident smile of a man who has never had to worry about a past due notice. We sat at the dining table. The china was bone white, the silverware was heavy silver, the roast beef was perfectly rare. "So," Graham said, slicing into his meat, "Justin tells me he closed the deal with the distribution center in Ohio. That is a massive win." "Son, massive. It was a team effort," Justin said modestly, though he preened under the praise. "We are looking at a 20% bonus structure this quarter." 20%. Lenora breathed. "That is wonderful. Darling, you are building a real future." Graham turned his gaze to me. It felt like a spotlight searching for a flaw. "And how is your work? Aubrey, still fighting the good fight at that school?" "It is going well," I said, taking a sip of water. "My juniors are starting their research papers, and the literacy program at the center is growing. We have a waiting list now. A waiting list for people who cannot read," Graham said, a chuckle rumbling in his chest. "I suppose there is a market for everything. It is important work," I said, my grip tightening on my fork. "These are people trying to improve their lives. It is safe work," Lenora cut in, her tone dripping with a pity that burned worse than anger. "That is the problem. Aubrey, you have always aimed for what is safe. You stay in that crumbling school, tutoring in that awful neighborhood. It is small. You are playing small. I am not playing." "Mother," I said, "I am teaching." Graham waved a hand dismissively. "You are 34. Aubrey, you are smart. You have a degree. You could have gone into corporate communications. You could have worked in the firm, but you chose to be stuck." "Stuck," I repeated. "Yes, stuck," he said. "It is embarrassing. Frankly, when people ask me what my daughter does, I have to say she is a teacher at Central. They give me that look. You know the look, the one that says, 'Oh, that is nice, like you are a volunteer.'" I put my fork down. The roast beef suddenly tasted like ash. "I am not a volunteer," I said quietly. "I am a professional, and I am helping people who actually need it." Justin cleared his throat. "Let's not do this tonight. Guys, you are right," Lenora said, signaling for the maid to clear the plates. "Let's not ruin a lovely dinner. Aubrey, try the potatoes. They are truffle-infused." I sat there, the silence ringing in my ears. They did not see me. They saw a disappointment they could not brag about at the country club. They saw a woman who had failed to launch, simply because my definition of success did not involve a corner office or a German car. I left an hour later, pleading a headache. As I drove back to my side of town, the tears finally came, hot and humiliating. I told myself their words did not matter. I told myself I knew who I was. But as I lay in bed that night, listening to Mrs. Gable coughing through the thin walls, the word echoed in my mind. Small, small, small. Monday morning at Larkridge Central began with a scream. It was first period. I was writing a prompt on the whiteboard. Define justice. Is it a law or a feeling? The intercom crackled, but no voice came through. Just a high-pitched feedback whine that made my students cover their ears. Then, the fire alarm strobed. Not the regular rhythmic blast, but a stuttering, erratic flash. I turned to the class. Stay seated, I commanded, my voice projecting to the back of the room. It is likely a glitch, but then the smell drifted in from the hallway. It was thicker than it had been last week. It tasted metallic, like copper pennies and bleach. I went to the door and looked out. The hallway was filled with a thin, low-hanging haze. Students were spilling out of the classrooms in the East Wing, the new wellness wing, coughing and rubbing their eyes. Then I saw him, Leo, the boy who had been missing last week, was stumbling out of the new computer lab. He looked pale, his skin a terrifying shade of gray-green. He took 2 steps. His knees buckled, and he hit the floor with a heavy, sickening thud. "Leo!" I shouted, sprinting down the hall. I dropped to my knees beside him. His eyes were rolled back, showing the whites. He was seizing, his body jerking in tight, violent spasms. "Back up!" I yelled at the circle of students forming around us. "Give him air! Call the nurse! Now!" I cushioned Leo's head with my cardigan. The floor beneath us, the expensive, polished concrete of the new wing, felt vibrating, as if a machine were running directly underneath. The seizure lasted 40 seconds. It felt like an hour. When he stopped, he was limp, his breathing shallow and wet. The principal, Marin Holt, came running down the hall, her heels clicking frantically. The school nurse was right behind her. "Get the students back in the classrooms," Marin shouted to the other teachers. "Clear the hall." I stood up, shaking, my hands stained with the dust from the floor. As the nurse took over, checking Leo's vitals, I stepped back toward the wall. That was when I saw the man. He was wearing a gray jumpsuit with a generic facility management logo. He wasn't looking at the boy on the floor. He wasn't looking at the chaos. He was standing by the electrical panel near the water fountain, the panel that controlled the ventilation for this section of the wing. He held a scraper in his hand. I watched, frozen, as he wedged the tool under the plastic inspection placard adhered to the metal box. With a quick, practiced motion, he peeled it off. He crumpled it into his pocket and immediately slapped a new sticker in its place. The new sticker was bright yellow. It looked brand new. He smoothed it down with his thumb, looked around once to see if anyone was watching, and then walked quickly toward the rear exit. "Hey!" I called out. He did not stop. He pushed through the emergency exit doors, and the alarm on them did not sound. "Aubrey!" Marin was at my elbow, her grip tight on my arm. "Are you okay?" I looked at her. Her face was pale, her lipstick bleeding into the fine lines around her mouth. "Marin," I said, pointing at the exit. "That man. He just changed the inspection tag on the panel." Marin didn't look at the door. She looked at me, and her eyes were hard, focused. "Aubrey, focus. We have a sick student. The paramedics are on their way. Go back to your class." But he changed the date. I insisted. "I saw him. Leave it to operations." "Aubrey," she said. Her voice was low, dropping an octave. "Please, just go back to your room." She turned away, dismissing me. I walked back to my classroom, my heart hammering against my ribs. I got my students settled, told them it was just a medical emergency and Leo would be fine. I went through the motions of teaching, but my mind was racing. During my planning period, I did not grade papers. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk, the one with the lock. Inside was a plain manila folder. I had started it 3 weeks ago, when the doors first started sticking. Inside were photos I had taken on my phone. A picture of water leaking from a ceiling tile in the brand new library. A picture of mold growing in the corner of the guidance office. A printout of an email sent to my tutoring account from an anonymous sender, someone who called themselves concerned_staff. The email was short. They pulled the copper wiring from the bid and used aluminum. The fire rating on the insulation is wrong. Don't let them tell you it is just settling pains. I added a note to the file on a yellow legal pad. November 14th. Student collapse, chemical odor. Maintenance worker replaced inspection tag on east wing ventilation panel immediately after incident. Principal Holt dismissed it. I closed the folder and locked the drawer. At 3 o'clock, I was summoned to the principal's office. Marin Holt sat behind her desk. She looked exhausted. There was a framed photo of her grandchildren on the shelf behind her. Close the door. Aubrey, she said. I sat down. How is Leo? He is at the hospital. They are saying it was a reaction to medication. I frowned. I know Leo. He doesn't take medication. Marin sighed, rubbing her temples. That is what the parents said. Listen, Aubrey, I appreciate your quick thinking today. You managed the scene well. But, I asked. But you need to stop asking questions about the building, she said. I stared at her. Marin, I saw a man tamper with a safety record while a child was seizing on the floor. It was likely a scheduled update, Marin said. But she wouldn't meet my eyes. She was rearranging paper clips on her desk. Scheduled updates don't happen during emergencies. I said, and that smell. The district is aware of the ventilation issues. She interrupted. They are handling it with the contractor. Hallomere is sending a team out tomorrow. Hallomere, I said. The people who built it? They are investigating themselves? Aubrey, Marin said. And this time she looked up. Her eyes were pleading. This is not just about a leaky roof. There are district politics involved. Heavy politics. You are a brilliant teacher. You do so much for these kids. Do not throw that away by playing investigator. Is that a threat? I asked softly. It is advice, she said. From someone who likes you. Go home. Grade your papers. Let the people in charge handle the building. I left her office feeling a cold knot in my stomach. Marin was a good woman. She cared about the students. If she was scared, that meant the fear was coming from high up. That evening, I was at home, trying to decompress with a cup of tea. When my phone rang, it was a number I did not recognize. Hello? Ms. Barnes? This is Sarah Jenkins from the Northgate Civic Trust. I sat up straighter. The Northgate Civic Trust was the largest philanthropic organization in the city. They gave out grants that changed lives. Yes, this is she, Ms. Barnes. We have been hearing wonderful things about your literacy initiative at the Southside Center, Sarah said. Her voice was warm, professional. We are looking to fund a community outreach program this cycle, and we would like to invite you to submit a formal proposal. We are talking about a grant in the range of $50,000. I nearly dropped my mug. $50,000. That would buy new computers, textbooks, maybe even pay for a second tutor so I wouldn't have to do it all alone. Oh my goodness, I said, breathless. That would be incredible. I mean, yes, absolutely. When is the deadline? We need it by the end of the month, Sarah said. I will email you the packet tonight. We are very excited. Aubrey. I hung up, feeling a surge of pure joy. For the first time in weeks, I felt light. I called Samuel. I called Mrs. Gable. I paced around my small living room, imagining what I could do with that money. I could finally prove to my parents that my work wasn't small. I could show them that I was making a real difference. 2 hours later, my computer pinged with an email. I opened it, expecting the application packet. Instead, the subject line read, Update regarding grant invitation. I clicked it. Dear Ms. Barnes, regarding our earlier conversation, we regret to inform you that upon further review of our strategic alignment for this quarter, we are unable to extend an invitation for a proposal at this time. We wish you the best in your endeavors. Sincerely, the Northgate Civic Trust. I stared at the screen. The joy evaporated, leaving a cold vacuum in my chest. Strategic alignment? In 2 hours? I called the number back. It went straight to voicemail. I sat there in the dark, the blue light of the monitor illuminating my face. It felt violent. It felt like a door had been slammed in my face, but I hadn't seen who was holding the handle. My phone buzzed again. It was Tessa Lang. Tessa was the school counselor at Central and my best friend. We had survived 5 years of budget cuts and curriculum changes together. "Aubrey," she said, "where are you?" "I am home," I said, my voice dull. "What is wrong?" "I need you to meet me at the diner on 4th, she said, "now." The diner was a neon-lit sanctuary of grease and caffeine. Tessa was sitting in a back booth, nursing a black coffee. She looked like she hadn't slept. She waited until I slid into the booth across from her before she spoke. "Did you hear about the grant?" I asked. She waved her hand. "Forget the grant. Aubrey, that is the least of it. What are you talking about?" Tessa leaned in, lowering her voice. She looked around the diner to make sure no one was close. "I was in the administration office late tonight," she said. "I heard Marin on the phone. She was yelling. Marin never yells." I said, "She was yelling today." Tessa said, "She was talking to the superintendent." She said, "My teachers are noticing. The kids are getting sick. We cannot keep a lid on this." I felt a chill. "So she knows. She knows," Tessa confirmed. "But here's the bad part. I did some digging on Hallowmere Development Group. I waited. It is a shell company. Aubrey. Or at least, it operates like one. They got the contract for the wellness wing without a competitive bid. It was pushed through as an emergency allocation. How do you know that? My cousin works in the city clerk's office." She said, "But listen to me. The board of directors for the group that funded the project? The Friends of Larkridge Schools? Yes, it is a donor network." Tessa said, "Wealthy locals. They raise the money. They pick the contractor. The district rubber stamps it. And Aubrey." She reached across the table and took my hand. Her fingers were cold. "What?" I whispered. "I saw the donor list for the gala that launched the project last year." She said, "The top-tier donors, the Platinum Circle. Just say it. Tessa, your parents were on the list." She said, "Graham and Lenora Barnes. They donated $10,000 to the launch fund. And your father, he is listed as an honorary advisor to the selection committee." The world seemed to tilt sideways. "My father?" I said. "My father hates public schools. He thinks they are money pits. He is involved." "Aubrey," she said, "and people are terrified to talk about Hallowmere because the money behind it is the same money that runs this town. That is why your grant got pulled." I pulled my hand away. "No, that is paranoid." "Is it?" she asked. "You made noise about the inspection sticker today." 2 hours later, the Northgate Trust, which is run by the same social circle your parents swim in, suddenly decides you are persona non grata. You do the math. I sat back against the vinyl booth. The smell of frying bacon suddenly made me nauseous. My father belittled my job. He called it small. He acted like he barely knew what I did. But if Tessa was right, he had been helping to make decisions about my school, decisions that were hurting my students, while laughing at me across the dinner table. He knew. I whispered, "Aubrey," Tessa said urgently, "you have to be careful. These people protect their own. If you start pulling on this thread, the whole sweater is going to unravel, and they will blame you for it." I looked out the window at the dark street. I thought about Leo seizing on the floor. I thought about the man in the gray jumpsuit peeling off the sticker. I thought about the letters I taught Samuel to read. I thought about my father's voice. "Just a lowly teacher. I'm not going to fight a war." "Tessa," I said, my voice trembling slightly, "I cannot win a war against people like my parents." "Good," Tessa said, exhaling. "That is smart. But," I continued, looking back at her, "I am not going to let them poison my students. Aubrey, I am going to keep the folder. Tessa, I am going to document everything, every jammed door, every sick kid, every changed date, not to sue them, not to go to the press, just to have it, to protect us if something worse happens." Tessa looked at me with a mixture of admiration and fear. "You are playing with fire," she said. "I know," I said. I drove home in silence. The city lights blurred past me. I felt a profound sense of isolation. I was standing on the edge of a cliff, and the people who were supposed to catch me were the ones digging the ground out from under my feet. I was terrified. If my parents found out I was tracking their friends, tracking them, they would destroy me. They would twist this into proof of my incompetence, my ingratitude. They would say I was biting the hand that fed the city. But as I walked into my apartment and locked the door, I took the manila folder out of my bag. I sat at my kitchen table and wrote down everything Tessa had told me. I dated the page. I signed my initials. I was just a teacher. I was safe. I was small. But even small things, when thrown into a machine, can break the gears. I turned off the light. But I did not sleep. The silence in the staff lounge was the first thing that told me the war had begun. It was 2 weeks after the incident with Leo, and the school felt like a held breath. The chemical smell in the East Wing had been scrubbed away with industrial lemon deodorizer. But the underlying tension remained. I stood by the coffee machine, watching the steam rise, and realized the room was quieter than usual. Sarah Jenkins, the chemistry teacher who had loudly complained about headaches during the faculty meeting 3 days ago, was not at her table. I walked over to Greg, the history teacher who coached junior varsity football. "Where is Sarah?" I asked, keeping my voice low. Greg didn't look up from his sandwich. He kept his eyes fixed on the crust as he peeled it away. "Sarah is taking some personal time." "Personal time?" I asked. "She has perfect attendance." "Greg, she was just talking about the science fair yesterday." Greg finally looked at me, and I saw a flicker of nervous energy in his eyes. He lowered his voice to a whisper. "The district offered her a paid sabbatical. Effective immediately. Something about stress management and curriculum development." He took a bite of his sandwich, chewing aggressively as if to end the conversation. "They moved her out this morning. Aubrey, before first period." I felt a cold prickle at the base of my neck. Sarah had been the one to log the complaint about the ventilation units vibrating. She had been the one who used the word negligence in the teacher group chat. Now she was gone, erased by a sudden, generous sabbatical. Over the next 3 days, the pattern clarified itself like a photograph developing in a darkroom. It was not a purge. It was a gentle, polite restructuring. The custodian who had mentioned the loose wiring was transferred to a middle school across town for a promotion. The librarian who pointed out the leaking ceiling tiles was asked to lead a district-wide digitization project that required her to work from the central office. Miles away from the building, it was soft power. It was friendly emails and unexpected opportunities. It was a silencer screwed onto the barrel of a gun so that no one heard the shot. On Thursday afternoon, I returned to my classroom after my planning period. The room was empty, the late afternoon sun casting long, dusty rectangles on the floor. I walked to my desk to grab my attendance sheet. The bottom drawer, the one I kept locked, was slightly ajar. My heart hammered against my ribs. I froze, listening for footsteps in the hallway. There was only the distant hum of the floor polisher. I pulled the drawer open. My manila folder was there, seemingly untouched, but resting on top of it, sitting innocently on the yellow legal pad, was a small, silver flash drive. It was not mine. I picked it up. It was cold and heavy, a sleek piece of metal with no brand name. I looked around the room again. My door was locked. Whoever had put this here had a key. I sat down and plugged the drive into my laptop. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to try twice to fit it into the port. A single folder appeared on the screen titled Meeting Minutes/Budget Reconciliation/Q3. I clicked it open. Dozens of PDF files filled the screen. I opened one at random. It was a scan of a budget invoice from Hallowmere Development Group. It listed the cost of the HVAC units installed in the East Wing. Unit type, industrial grade. HEPA filtration system. Cost, $12,000 per unit. I opened the next file. It was an internal email between 2 project managers at Hallowmere. The subject line was substitution approval. Per conversation with the board, we are swapping the specified HEPA units for the standard commercial Model B to offset the concrete overruns. Savings: $8,000 per unit. No update to public ledger required. I did the math in my head. There were 20 units in the wing. That was $160,000 pocketed in a single line item change. And they had installed inferior ventilation in a building full of children. I clicked through more files. Meeting minutes that showed discussions about accelerating inspection timelines, emails joking about the picky inspector who needed to be handled. This was not just cutting corners. This was organized theft, and it was deliberate endangerment. I ejected the drive and shoved it into my bra. The cold metal against my skin, the only thing that felt real. I grabbed my bag and ran. Tessa locked her office door and pulled the blinds. "You cannot keep this here," she whispered, staring at the flash drive on her desk as if it were a live grenade. I did not know where else to go. I said, my voice sounded thin, "Stretch tight. Tessa, look at the dates." They knew the ventilation was bad before they even poured the foundation. They planned it. Tessa paced the small length of her office, her heels sinking into the worn carpet. "Aubrey, do you understand what this is? This is prison time for someone. This is millions of dollars, and it is why Leo had a seizure." I said. Tessa stopped and looked at me. Her face was pale. "You need a lawyer, not a school lawyer, a real one. I can't afford a lawyer." I said. "You cannot afford not to have one," she countered. "If they catch you with this, if they track who downloaded these files, they will not just fire you, they will bury you. They will say you stole proprietary data. They will say you hacked the district." She grabbed my shoulders. "Aubrey, listen to me. Being right does not protect you from being crushed. You are standing in front of a freight train holding up a stop sign." "I know," I said. "I know." But I could not stop. The anger was a hard, hot stone in my stomach. "There is a community listening session tonight at the district auditorium." I said, "Halomere executives are going to be there to answer questions about the teething issues with the building." Tessa's eyes widened. "You are not going." "I am going." I said, "I need to see them. I need to see the people who wrote these emails." "Aubrey, I will be quiet. I promised. I just want to listen." The auditorium was packed. Parents, teachers, and concerned neighbors filled the rows of folding chairs. The air was thick with skepticism and the distinct smell of damp wool coats. On the stage, behind a long table draped in blue cloth, sat 3 men in suits that cost more than my car. In the center was the CEO of Halomere, a man named Marcus Vane. He had silver hair and a smile that looked like it had been practiced in a mirror for hours. Beside him sat the district superintendent. "Dr. Aris, we understand there have been some concerns regarding the new facility," Marcus Vane said into the microphone. His voice was smooth, a baritone that commanded trust. "I want to assure you that what we are experiencing is standard for a project of this magnitude. The odors are merely off-gassing from the high-grade sealants we used. It is completely harmless and will dissipate within the week." A parent stood up near the front. "My daughter has asthma. She has used her inhaler 3 times this week. That is not harmless. We sympathize." "Absolutely," Vane said, nodding gravely. "And we are looking into individual sensitivities. But let's look at the big picture. This facility is a state-of-the-art investment in your children's future. It is a jewel for Larkridge." I sat in the back row, gripping the edge of my seat. Individual sensitivities. They were blaming the kids for breathing the air. I scanned the room, looking for familiar faces. I saw Principal Holt sitting in the front row, looking stiff and miserable. And then I saw her, my mother. Lenora Barnes was standing near the side exit. She was wearing her signature cashmere coat, looking elegant and out of place among the tired parents. The session ended with a round of polite applause led by the district staff. As the crowd began to shuffle toward the exits, I watched Marcus Vane step down from the stage. He walked straight toward the side exit. He didn't walk past my mother. He stopped. He smiled. A real smile this time. Not the stage version. He took both of her hands in his. Lenora leaned in and kissed him on the cheek. It was the greeting of old friends, of people who shared summer homes and private jokes. She laughed at something he said, touching his arm with a familiarity that made my stomach turn over. I pushed through the crowd, my heart pounding in my ears. I had to know. I caught up with her in the parking lot. The wind was whipping dead leaves across the asphalt. "Mother!" I called out. Lenora turned, her keys in her hand. She looked surprised to see me, then composed herself. "Aubrey, I did not know you were here. I saw you inside," I said, breathless, with Marcus Vane. Lenora adjusted her scarf. "Yes, he is a charming man. You know him?" I asked. "You know the man who built the wing that is making my students sick?" Lenora sighed, the sound of a parent dealing with a toddler's tantrum. "Aubrey, do not be dramatic. I know Marcus from the symphony board. We have served on committees together for years. He lied to those parents," I said, my voice rising. "He stood on that stage and lied about the air quality, and you hugged him." Lenora stepped closer, her face hardening. "Lower your voice. You are in a public parking lot." "I don't care," I said. "Did you know? Did you know his company cut corners?" Lenora looked at me with a chilling mix of pity and steel. "Aubrey, listen to me. Construction is a complex business. There are always adjustments. Marcus is a good man who has done a lot for this city. He employs hundreds of people. He is poisoning children." I snapped. Lenora opened her car door. "This is exactly what your father means," she said. "You see a cracked tile and you think it is a conspiracy. You are looking for villains because it makes you feel important. I am looking for the truth." I said, "Then here is some truth," she said, pausing with her hand on the doorframe. "You are a teacher. You are not an engineer, and you are not a politician. Do not pick fights you cannot win. Aubrey, it is unbecoming, and it embarrasses the family." She got into her Mercedes and slammed the door. I watched her taillights fade into the darkness, realizing that to her, the safety of my students was less important than the awkwardness of a dinner party conversation. The next afternoon, I took a half day. I told the secretary I had a dental appointment. I drove to the warehouse district on the south side of the city, to a narrow brick building that housed the Neighborhood Legal Defense Fund. It was a fictional nonprofit clinic I had found online, one that specialized in labor disputes and tenant rights. The lawyer's name was Elena Russo. She was younger than me, with tired eyes and a desk piled high with files. She listened to me for 20 minutes without interrupting. I did not show her the drive yet. I just described it. When I finished, she took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. "Okay," she said. "Here is the reality. You have what we call fruit of the poisonous tree potential. If you did not obtain that drive through legal channels, if you stole it, or if it was stolen, using it in court is a nightmare. I didn't steal it," I said. "It was left for me." "Can you prove that?" she asked. "Can you prove you didn't hack the system?" "No," Elena sighed. "If you go public with this, Halomir will sue you for defamation. They will sue you for theft of trade secrets. They will bankrupt you before the truth ever sees a jury." "So I do nothing?" I asked, feeling the hopelessness rising again. "No," she said. "You document. You create a chain of custody. You write down exactly when you found it, who you told, where you kept it, and you need to corroborate what is on there with public records. If the drive says they bought cheap fans, go find the physical fans and take a picture of the serial number. Make the evidence external, not digital." She leaned forward. "And Aubrey? Be careful. Whistleblowers tend to get run over. The law protects you in theory. In practice, it usually arrives too late to save your career." I left the clinic feeling heavier than when I arrived. I had evidence, but it was radioactive. On Friday, during lunch period, a student knocked on my classroom door. It was Riley Chen, the editor of the student newspaper, the Larkridge Ledger. Riley was a brilliant, tenacious senior who wanted to go to Columbia Journalism School. "Ms. Barnes, do you have a minute? Come in." "Riley," I said, putting down my sandwich. She sat opposite me, her notebook open. I am writing a follow-up on the evacuation last week. I wanted to ask you, is it true that you saw a maintenance worker changing the safety tags? I froze. Who told you that? Riley shrugged. People talk. Students heard you yelling at Principal Holt. I just want to quote. If a teacher goes on record, the district can't just dismiss it as rumors. I looked at her. She was 17. She had her whole life ahead of her. If I gave her that quote, I would be fired. And the district would probably expel her or shut down the paper. Riley, I said carefully, I cannot give you a quote. But, however, I interrupted gently. If I were a journalist, I would not rely on quotes. I would look at public documents. Did you know that all school maintenance contracts are technically public record? You can file a request with the district clerk. Riley's eyes narrowed. Processing the hint. A Freedom of Information request? It takes time, I said, but paper doesn't lie. Riley smiled. A sharp, shark-like smile. Thank you, Ms. Barnes. I watched her leave, feeling a mix of pride and dread. I had pointed her in the right direction, but I had also put a target on her back. That evening, I was grading papers at home when my phone started buzzing relentlessly. I opened social media. My feed was flooded. Riley hadn't filed a request. She had written an opinion piece titled, What is that smell? The Secrets in the Walls of Larkridge High. And in the third paragraph, she wrote, Sources close to the faculty confirm that safety inspection tags may have been tampered with following the student collapse. She hadn't named me, but she had used my information. The article had 2,000 shares. I refreshed the page. A statement from the district popped up at the top of the feed. The Larkridge School District categorically denies the baseless allegations circulating on social media regarding the Student Wellness Center. The medical incident last week was an isolated event unrelated to school facilities. We are disappointed that rumors are being spread to create panic. My phone pinged with a text message. It was from a number I did not have saved. I opened it. Teachers should teach. Don't make this personal. I stared at the screen. The text was simple, brutal. It wasn't a bot. It was a direct message from someone who had my personal cell number. I walked to my window and looked out at the street. A dark sedan was parked 2 houses down. It was probably just a neighbor. Probably, but for the first time, I closed my blinds. Saturday morning. My father called. Aubrey, Graham said, his voice booming and jovial. I am in your neck of the woods. I have a meeting with a client near the river. Let me take you to lunch. I hesitated. My father never came to my side of town, and after the dinner last week, I didn't want to see him. I have a lot of grading. Dad, you have to eat, he said. Come on, I will take you to the Gilded Fork. My treat. The Gilded Fork was the most expensive restaurant in the city. Okay, I said. I will meet you there at noon. I wore my best blazer, trying to look like the professional he always claimed I wasn't. When I arrived, Graham was already seated at a corner booth, a martini in front of him. He stood up and hugged me. It was a stiff, obligatory hug. But he was smiling. You look good? Aubrey, he said. Tired, but good. Sit. Order whatever you want. I ordered a salad. He ordered the lobster bisque and a steak. So, he said, buttering a roll. How are things? I know your mother and I were a bit harsh the other night. We just want the best for you. It is fine. I said, I know you worry. We do. He said, we worry about you being in that environment, especially with all this noise in the news. He paused, watching me over the rim of his glass. This business with the ventilation, he said casually. It is becoming quite a headache for the city. It is a headache for the students who can't breathe. I said, right. He said quickly, terrible. But you know how kids are, mass hysteria. One kid coughs. They all cough. Leo had a seizure. Dad, Graham waved his hand. I heard he had epilepsy, pre-existing condition. Where did you hear that? I asked sharply. That is confidential medical information. Graham didn't flinch. Oh, you know, talk at the club. People chatter. He leaned in, his voice dropping. Listen, Aubrey, I am hearing rumors that some of the staff are agitating, trying to make this into a lawsuit. I stared at him. He wasn't here to apologize. He was fishing. Are they? I asked, keeping my face neutral. Graham cut a piece of steak. You know, if anyone is keeping notes or files, it would be very dangerous for them. These developers play hardball. I would hate to see a young teacher get caught in the crossfire of a corporate dispute. My blood ran cold. Files. Why would you think there are files? Dad? He looked at me, and for a second, the mask slipped. His eyes were cold, calculating. He was not looking at his daughter. He was looking at a liability. I'm just saying. He said softly, if you know anyone who is confused about what is happening, tell them to let it go. For their own sake. You don't want to ruin your career over a misunderstanding. He took a sip of his martini. By the way, he added, his voice returning to its jovial boom, I saw your car out front. That rattling sound is getting worse. We really should look at getting you a lease on something safer. Maybe a Volvo. I could talk to a friend of mine. I looked at the lobster bisque in front of him, rich and creamy. I looked at his manicured hands. He knew. He didn't know exactly what I had, but he knew I had something. He knew I was the source of the agitation, and he was trying to buy me off with a Volvo. I am not hungry, I said, pushing my plate away. Aubrey, don't be like that, he said. I have to go. Dad, I have grading to do. I walked out of the restaurant, my legs shaking. I didn't go to my car immediately. I stood on the sidewalk, breathing in the cold air. The text message from last night replayed in my mind. Don't make this personal. But it was personal. My mother hugging the man who poisoned my school. My father buying me lunch to interrogate me about evidence. I realized then that I wasn't just fighting a corrupt construction company. I wasn't just fighting a school district. I was fighting my own family. I walked to my car, unlocking it with the manual key. As I sat in the driver's seat, I checked the rearview mirror. The black sedan was there again. 2 cars back, I started the engine. It sputtered, then caught. I pulled into traffic, and the black sedan pulled out behind me. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. They were tracking me. And my father, the man who had taught me to ride a bike, the man who had paid for my college, was sitting in a restaurant 2 blocks away. Hoping I would take the hint and shut up, I merged onto the highway, watching the headlights behind me. I wasn't going to shut up, but I needed to disappear. The basement of Tessa's house smelled of damp concrete and the vanilla candles she burned to mask it. It was 8 o'clock on a Wednesday night. 3 days after I had found the flash drive, the windows were small, high rectangles covered with thick blackout curtains Tessa had stapled into place. We were not a revolution. We were 5 people sitting on folding chairs around a card table. There was me. There was Tessa. There was Sarah Jenkins, the chemistry teacher who had been forced into a sabbatical and looked 10 years older than she had last week. There was a young civics teacher named David who had found mold in his ceiling tiles. And there was Harold Vance. Harold was 68 years old, a retired facilities auditor who had spent 30 years working for the school district before being pushed out 2 years ago. He wore a tweed jacket that had seen better decades and cleaned his thick glasses constantly with a handkerchief. He had the printed pages from the flash drive spread out in front of him like a solitaire game. You see this? Harold asked, tapping a spreadsheet with a yellow-stained finger. This is what we call a cascading subcontract. He looked around the table. We all stared back blankly. Explain it like we are students. Harold, Tessa said gently. Harold sighed. Hallomere gets the contract for $20 million. They are the prime contractor. On paper, they are responsible. But look here. Line 42. They hire a company called Zenith Drywall to do the interior framing. Zenith hires a company called Quick Fix Interiors. Quick Fix hires a guy with a van and 3 undocumented workers. He took a sip of lukewarm coffee. By the time the money gets to the guy with the van, 70% of it is gone, Harold said. Hallomere keeps the profit. Zenith keeps a cut. Quick Fix keeps a cut. So the guy at the bottom? He has $2 to do a $10 job. He buys the cheapest studs, the thinnest insulation, and he works fast because he is paid by the wall, not by the hour. And the inspections? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. Harold picked up another paper. This is the smoking gun. This is the final occupancy permit for the East Wing. He slid it across the table toward me. Look at the signature. Aubrey. I looked. The signature was a scrawl in blue ink. Arthur P. Hobb. I know Artie, Harold said, leaning back in his chair. Good man. Heavy drinker. He was the senior inspector for the county. He signed it. I said, so it passed? Look at the date, Harold commanded. I traced the line. August 12th. Now, Harold said. Artie Hobb retired on August 14th. 2 days later, he moved to Florida the same week, bought a condo in Boca Raton, paid cash. The room went silent. The furnace kicked on in the corner, a low rumble that vibrated in the floor. 2 days before he retired. I whispered, he cleared a $20 million building in a single afternoon. Harold said, a building that usually takes 3 days to inspect properly, and then he vanished. That signature was his retirement gift, or his payout. My stomach turned over. It wasn't just negligence, it was a transaction. So what do we do? David asked. Do we go to the police? Harold shook his head. Local police won't touch this. This is white-collar construction fraud. It is complicated. It is boring. And the people doing it donate to the sheriff's re-election fund. You need the state. You need the Office of Public Integrity. He looked at me. But they move slow. Aubrey, glacially slow. And if you file a formal complaint, your name goes on it. They already know. I said, they are following me. Then you have to be faster than them. Harold said, you have to give the state something so solid, so undeniable, that they cannot bury it. You need the chain of command. You need to prove who ordered Artie to sign that paper. I looked at the signature again. August 12th. August was when the gala was held, the fundraiser my parents attended. I need to go, I said, standing up. Aubrey, Tessa said, grabbing my arm. Be careful. I am always careful. I lied. The following Tuesday, the second disaster struck. It was mid-morning. During the passing period between second and third block, the hallways were a river of noise, slamming lockers, shouting teenagers, the squeak of sneakers on linoleum. I was standing at my door, monitoring the traffic, when I heard the pop. It sounded like a large light bulb shattering, followed immediately by a distinct, electric hiss. Then came the scream. Fire! I stepped into the hall. Smoke was already billowing from a utility closet 3 doors down. Thick, black, acrid smoke that smelled of melting plastic. The fire alarm blared. A deafening, strobe-lit pulse. Panic is a contagion. I saw it ripple through the crowd. Students froze, then surged. A girl dropped her books. A boy shoved someone to get to the exit. Stop! I shouted. I didn't scream. I projected. It was the voice I used when I taught Shakespeare to a room of bored 17-year-olds. It was a voice that demanded to be heard. I stepped into the center of the hallway, blocking the stampede. Walk, I commanded. To the west exit. Do not run. Do not push. The students looked at me. For a second, the panic held its breath. You, I pointed to a senior linebacker named Marcus. Lead the line. West exit. Go. Marcus nodded and started walking. The others followed. I stayed where I was, the smoke thickening around me, stinging my eyes. I checked the bathroom. Empty. I checked the classroom next to the closet. Empty. The smoke was getting heavier, rolling along the ceiling like a dark wave. I pulled the collar of my sweater over my nose and mouth. Ms. Barnes, a student yelled from the end of the hall. Come on. I am coming. I called back. I did a final sweep, my eyes watering, ensuring no one was left behind in the haze. As I stepped out of the building and into the cold, bright sunlight of the parking lot, I was coughing violently. The fire trucks were already screaming up the driveway. Students were clustered on the grass, shivering without their coats, and standing by the perimeter fence, camera raised, was a news crew. They had been there interviewing parents about the ongoing smell complaints. Now, they had a scoop. I didn't see the camera. I was busy checking heads, counting students, wiping soot from my cheek. I was holding a crying freshman girl who had lost her phone in the chaos. "It is okay," I was saying, rubbing her back. "It is just stuff. You are safe. That is what matters." The camera caught it all. The soot on my face, the steady way I moved through the crowd, the way the students gravitated toward me. By 6 o'clock that evening, the clip had 10,000 views. By midnight, it had 100,000. The headline on the local news website read, "Teacher leads calm evacuation as fire breaks out in troubled high school." I woke up on Wednesday morning to a phone that would not stop vibrating. Texts from friends, from former students, from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. "You're a hero." "Aubrey, saw you on the news. So brave." I felt sick. I didn't want to be a hero. I wanted a safe building. I drove to school, navigating past 3 news vans parked on the public street across from the entrance. When I got to the main office, the secretary, Mrs. Higgins, looked at me with wide eyes. "Principal Holt wants to see you," she said, immediately. Maren Holt was standing by her window, looking out at the news vans. She turned when I entered. She looked tired, her face drawn and tight. "Sit down." "Aubrey." I sat. The chair felt hard. "The district is appreciative of your actions yesterday," Maren said, choosing her words carefully. "You handled the evacuation perfectly. I just did my job." Maren, "Yes," she said. "But the video, it has gone national." I blinked. "National?" "A producer from the Morning Hour called the superintendent's office an hour ago." Maren said, "They want to fly you to New York. They want to interview the hero teacher of Larkridge." I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. This was the platform. I can talk about the fire. I said, I can talk about why the wiring shorted out. I can talk about the inspection reports. Maren's expression shut down. "No. Excuse me? Aubrey. The district is offering you media training," she said. "Media training?" "Yes. We have a consultant coming in this afternoon. He will help you prepare a statement. You will talk about the quick response of the fire department. You will talk about our robust safety drills. You will praise the administration for the swift evacuation protocols." "And the fire?" I asked. "The cause of the fire?" "The fire marshal is investigating," Maren said robotically. "It appears to be a minor overload in a surge protector. Nothing systemic. That is a lie." I said quietly, "Harold Vance told me about the subcontractors. They use cheap wiring. Maren, it is in the walls." Maren slammed her hand on the desk. It wasn't a hard slam, but it was enough to make the framed photo of her grandchildren jump. "Stop it, Aubrey." She leaned over the desk, her voice dropping to a hiss. "Do not take that interview. If you go on national television and start spouting conspiracy theories about wiring and contracts, the district will not protect you. They will paint you as a hysterical woman seeking 15 minutes of fame. They will dig through your personnel file. They will find every late grade, every parent complaint, every sick day. Is that what you want?" I asked. "Or is that what Dr. Aris told you to say?" Maren looked away. She walked back to the window. "Take the media training," she said, her back to me. "Read the statement. Be the hero they want you to be. And then go back to your classroom and be quiet." I stood up. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just walked out. My planning period was interrupted by a call from my brother. I stared at the screen. "Justin." We hadn't spoken since the dinner. I answered. "Hello? Justin. What the hell are you doing?" "Aubrey?" His voice was tight, aggressive. I could hear the background noise of his office. Phones ringing, low chatter. "I'm grading essays." "Justin, what are you doing?" "Don't play dumb. I saw the video. Mom and Dad saw the video. I didn't ask to be filmed." "Justin, you are making a spectacle," he snapped. "Hero teacher, please." "You walk some kids out of a door. You are acting like you stormed Normandy. I saved them from a smoke-filled hallway." I said, my temper flaring. "A hallway that shouldn't have been smoking in a brand new building. Drop it." "Aubrey, drop what?" The crusade, he said. Dad is furious. Do you know he had 3 clients call him this morning? They are asking if his daughter is the one on the news, implying the school is a death trap. It makes the family look unstable. Unstable? I laughed. A harsh, dry sound. The school is a death trap. Justin, the wiring is faulty. The ventilation is poison. You are being dramatic, he said. You have always been dramatic. Just like when you didn't get into Yale and cried for a month. You never aimed high. So now you want to tear down the people who did. Is that what you think this is? Jealousy? I think you are lonely, Aubrey, and I think you like the attention. But you need to stop. You are embarrassing us. Dad told me to tell you, if you go on that morning show, don't expect to come to Christmas dinner. I held the phone away from my ear, staring at it. The threat was so petty, so small, and yet it hurt like a physical blow. Goodbye, Justin, I said, and hung up. I sat there, shaking. My own brother thought I was doing this for attention. He couldn't conceive of a world where someone acted out of moral duty rather than ego. A knock on the door startled me. It was a courier. He wore a brown uniform and held a thick, rigid cardboard envelope. Aubrey Barnes? He asked. Yes. Sign here. I signed. He handed me the envelope and left. I opened it. Inside was a letter on heavy, cream-colored bond paper. The letterhead was embossed in gold. Vane, Sterling Associates, Legal Counsel for Hallowmere Development Group. I read the first paragraph. Dear Ms. Barnes, it has come to our attention that you have been disseminating materially false and defamatory statements regarding the construction and safety of the Larkridge Student Wellness Center. These statements constitute tortious interference with our client's business reputation. It went on for 3 pages. It demanded I cease and desist all communication regarding the facility. It threatened a lawsuit for damages in excess of $5 million. They weren't just watching. They were ready to shoot. I hadn't even gone public yet. This was a preemptive strike. They knew I had the flash drive. They knew I had the photos. They were trying to scare me into silence before I could open my mouth. I put the letter in my bag. My hands were remarkably steady. The fear had burned off, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. I met Harold Vance at a diner 2 towns over, a place where no one knew us. He read the letter, chewing on a toothpick. Standard intimidation, he said, tossing it onto the table. They send these out like greeting cards. It says $5 million. Harold, they don't want your money. Aubrey, they know you don't have it. They want your silence. I drank my coffee black. It tasted like battery acid. I can't do this alone. Harold, I know, he said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. It was plain white with blue text. Office of Public Integrity. State Investigator. Elena Ross. I spoke to her. Harold said, she is interested. Interested? She has been tracking Hallowmere for a year. He said, they have contracts in 3 other counties. Similar issues. Cost overruns. Mysterious change orders. But she needs a witness on the inside. Someone who can authenticate the timeline. I can do that. I said, listen to me, Harold said, leaning in. If you go to OPI, it is a federal investigation. It takes months. They will impound records. They will interview everyone. But while that is happening, Hallowmere will come after you. The district will come after you. You will lose your job. You might lose your license. I thought about the students coughing in the hallway. I thought about the smoke. I don't care about the job anymore. I said, I care about the truth. Harold nodded slowly. Then call her. But Aubrey, you need one more thing. You need the link. The link? You have the bad building. You have the bad contract. You need the handshake. You need to prove that the people awarding the contract knew the people building it. You need the collusion. My parents. I whispered. I drove to my parents' house at 7 o'clock that evening. I knew they were out. Wednesday was their bridge club night at the country club. I still had my key. I parked down the street and walked up the driveway. The house loomed large and white in the darkness. A monument to their success. I let myself in. The alarm beeped, and I punched in the code. 0412. Justin's birthday, of course. The house smelled of lemon polish and expensive potpourri. It was silent. I walked down the main hallway. My mother called it the gallery. It was lined with framed photos of the family. Mostly Justin. Justin graduating. Justin accepting an award. Justin shaking hands with a senator. There were photos of my parents, too. Galas, fundraisers, ribbon cuttings. I scanned the walls, my heart pounding in my throat. I felt like a burglar in my own childhood home. I found it near the end of the hall, tucked between a photo of my parents in Paris and a photo of Justin's promotion party. It was an 8x10 glossy print in a silver frame. The caption at the bottom read, Larkridge School Modernization Gala, August 2024. In the photo, my father, Graham Barnes, was wearing a tuxedo. He was smiling broadly, a glass of champagne in one hand. His other hand was firmly clasping the hand of Marcus Vane. They were looking at each other not like strangers, but like partners, like co-conspirators, and standing just behind them, laughing at something Marcus was saying, was the retired inspector, Arthur P. Hobb. I took the frame off the wall. My hands were shaking. August, the same month the contract was awarded. The same month the inspector signed the permit and retired. My father hadn't just attended the gala. He was celebrating with them. He was in the inner circle. I took my phone out and snapped a high-resolution photo of the picture. Then I took a picture of the back of the frame, where the photographer's label was stuck. I put the frame back on the wall. It looked slightly crooked. I didn't fix it. I walked out of the house, locking the door behind me. As I walked back to my car, I saw the black sedan parked at the corner. The engine was idling. I didn't run. I walked to my car, got in, and locked the doors. I sat there for a moment in the dark. I had the flash drive. I had the legal threat. I had the photo. And I had an invitation from a national morning show. Marin had told me that if I went on TV, I would be painted as a hysterical woman. Justin had told me I would be an embarrassment. They were counting on my fear. They were counting on Aubrey, the lowly teacher, to retreat to her safe. Small life, but I wasn't safe, and I was done being small. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number for the producer in New York. It rang twice. The morning hour. This is Jessica. Hello? Jessica, I said, my voice steady and clear in the quiet car. This is Aubrey Barnes. Ms. Barnes, we were hoping you would call back. Have you decided? I looked at the black sedan in my rearview mirror. Yes, I said. I will do the interview. That is wonderful. We can send a car for you tomorrow. We just want to focus on the hero angle, the rescue, the positive. No, I cut her off. There was a pause on the line. Excuse me? I will do the interview, I said. But we are not going to talk about me being a hero. We are going to talk about why the fire happened, and I am going to bring some documents with me. Ms. Barnes, that sounds complicated. We usually like to keep these segments uplifting. It will be uplifting, I said, because the truth is finally going to come out. Do you want the story, Jessica? Or do you want the fluff? A longer pause. Then, the producer's voice changed. It became sharper, more interested. Can you prove what you are saying? I looked at the photo on my phone. Yes, I said. I can prove it all. I will book the flight, she said. I hung up. I put the car in gear and drove past the black sedan, staring straight ahead. I was terrified. Yes, but for the first time in my life. I wasn't waiting for permission to speak. I was going to burn it all down. The fluorescent lights of the Neighborhood Legal Defense Fund hummed with a low, insistent buzz that matched the vibration in my chest. Elena Russo sat across from me, her desk a fortress of manila folders. She held a stopwatch in her hand. Again, she said, and this time, cut the adjectives. I took a deep breath. The ventilation system in the East Wing is dangerous because... Stop, Elena cut in. Dangerous is an opinion. Unless you are a toxicology expert, you cannot say it is dangerous. What can you say? I closed my eyes, visualizing the yellow legal pad I had been memorizing for 3 days. I can say that students have reported respiratory distress. I can say that I witnessed a student suffer a seizure in a hallway that smelled of chemicals. I can say that I have seen maintenance logs that do not match the public record. Elena clicked the stopwatch. Better, but be careful with do not match. Say differ from. It sounds less accusatory and more objective. Remember, Aubrey, you are not there to be the judge. You are the witness. If you start speculating about motives, Halomir's lawyers will eat you alive on live television. Stick to what you saw. Stick to the paper. It feels like I am stripping the truth down until it is naked, I said. Naked truth is harder to argue with, Elena said. Speculation is just a story. Facts are weapons. Do not tell a story. List the facts. She leaned forward, her expression softening for the first time in an hour. They are going to try to make you emotional. The host will ask you how you feel about the children being at risk. They want tears. They want anger. Do not give it to them. If you cry, you are a hysterical teacher. If you yell, you are a disgruntled employee. You need to be ice. You need to be the sanest person in the room. I nodded. Ice. I can do ice. Good, she said, because once you say these things into a microphone, there is no taking them back. You are lighting a fuse. Aubrey, make sure you are not standing on the bomb when it goes off. The morning of the interview, the sky was a bruised purple, heavy with rain that refused to fall. I arrived at school at 6 a.m, needing to gather my thoughts before the chaos of the day began. The interview was scheduled for a remote satellite feed at 4 p.m. I unlocked my classroom door. The air in the room felt shifted, displaced. It is a sense you develop as a teacher, knowing when a space has been occupied in your absence. I walked to my desk. The stack of Great Gatsby essays I had left on the corner was perfectly aligned. Too aligned. I had left them in a messy pile. The edges fanned out. Now they were a sharp, geometric block. My heart began to hammer a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I knelt down and unlocked the bottom drawer. The key slid in smoothly, but the mechanism felt loose. I pulled the drawer open. The manila folder was there. I opened it. The yellow legal pad was there. But the silver flash drive, the one I had found, the one with the budget discrepancies and the emails, was gone. I frantically shuffled through the papers, lifting the pad, checking the back of the drawer. I pulled the drawer all the way out, dumping the contents onto the floor. Paper clips, highlighters, stale cough drops, no drive. I stood up, backing away from the desk as if it were radioactive. I scanned the room. The supply cabinet in the back corner was unlatched. I walked over and pulled it open. The boxes of textbooks had been moved. The dust on the shelf had been disturbed, showing drag marks where files had been pulled out and shoved back in. I felt a violation so deep it was physical, a nausea rising in my throat. They had been here, while I was sleeping. Someone had walked into my sanctuary, gone through my private thoughts, and taken the only hard evidence I had. I grabbed my phone and ran. Tessa was already in her office, sipping tea and reading a guidance report. She looked up as I burst in, slamming the door behind me and locking it. "Aubrey?" she said, standing up. "What is it?" "It is gone," I gasped, pacing the small room. "The drive. They took it. Someone was in my room last night. They searched my desk." Tessa's face went pale. "Are you sure?" "I am sure," I hissed. "The papers were moved. The cabinet was open. Tessa, I have the interview in 8 hours. I have nothing. I have a story with no proof. If I go on TV now, I am just a liar with a grievance." I sank into the chair opposite her desk, putting my head in my hands. I should have listened to Elena. I should have made copies. I was so scared of being caught making copies that I just left it there. Tessa walked around her desk. She didn't touch me. She walked to the bookshelf behind her chair, where she kept her collection of potted succulents. She lifted a heavy ceramic pot containing a jade plant. Underneath the saucer, taped to the bottom of the pot, was a small black micro SD card. She peeled it off and held it out to me. "I knew you wouldn't do it," Tessa said softly. You are too honest, Aubrey. You think rules protect you. So I did it for you. I stared at the tiny chip in her palm. You copied it? 2 weeks ago, she said. When you first showed it to me, I took it while you were in the bathroom. I encrypted the files and put them on this, and I sent a cloud backup to a server my brother uses in Canada. I looked up at her, tears stinging my eyes. Tessa, you could get fired. You could get arrested. We are already past that, she said, her voice shaking slightly. Look at me, Aubrey. They broke into your classroom. This isn't a school anymore. It is a crime scene. You need to take this, hide it on you, somewhere they can't search. I took the card. It was so small, yet it felt heavier than the building itself. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me, she said grimly. Just win. I didn't go back to my classroom. I marched straight to the administration wing. Mrs. Higgins tried to stop me. Ms. Barnes, Principal Holt is in a meeting. I pushed past her and opened Marin's door without knocking. Marin Holt was alone, staring out the window at the gray sky. She turned, her expression tightening when she saw me. Aubrey, she said, I assume this is about the search. You admit it? I asked, my voice trembling with rage. You admit you let someone into my classroom to steal from me? I didn't authorize anything, Marin said, walking back to her desk and sitting down heavily. She looked older than she had yesterday. The lines around her mouth were etched deep. The district sent a team of compliance officers last night. It is standard procedure when there is a public controversy. They were securing district property. My personal notes are not district property, I said. And the evidence of fraud they took? Is that district property too? Marin flinched. She looked down at her hands. I was told they were looking for student records that might have been compromised. That is the official line. And you believe that? Marin looked up. Her eyes were wet. It doesn't matter what I believe. Aubrey, it matters what I can stop. And I can't stop this. I tried to tell you. This machine is bigger than this building. It is bigger than me. So you just let them do it, I said. You let them violate my space. I have a pension, Marin whispered, the shame in her voice searing. I have a husband who needs surgery next month. I have 3 years until retirement. I cannot be the hero you want me to be. I looked at her, a woman I had admired for a decade, a woman who had taught me how to manage a classroom, and I realized she was already gone. She was just a shell, hollowed out by fear. I don't need a hero, Marin, I said quietly. I needed a principal. I turned to leave. Aubrey, she called out. I stopped, my hand on the doorknob. Be careful today, she said. They are not just looking for files anymore. They are looking for a reason to destroy you. I left school at noon. I couldn't teach. I couldn't pretend that the Great Gatsby mattered when the walls around us were built on lies. I went home to prepare. I put on my best suit, a navy blue blazer I usually saved for parent-teacher conferences. I practiced my breathing. Ice, be ice, at 1 o'clock. My phone rang. Mom, I answered. Aubrey, Lenora's voice was ragged, stripped of its usual polished cadence. She was crying. Aubrey, please tell me you are not doing this. I am doing it, Mom. You cannot, she sobbed. Do you have any idea what this is doing to us? Your father hasn't slept in 2 days. People are calling the house. The neighbors are staring at us when we get the mail. You are humiliating us. This isn't about you, I said, gripping the phone. Why does everything have to be about how you look to the neighbors? It is about survival, she shrieked. You are ruining your father's career. He has spent 40 years building his name in this city. If you go on national television and drag him through the mud, he will be finished. We will be pariahs. I am not dragging him through the mud, I said. I am telling the truth about a corrupt construction deal. If Dad is connected to that, then that is his choice, not mine. He did it for you, she cried. He supported those schools for you. He wanted you to have a nice place to work. And this is how you repay him? By destroying him? I froze. He supported the schools? Mom, he calls my job lowly. He laughs at what I do. Don't rewrite history. He loves you. She wept. He is terrified. Aubrey, not for himself, for you. You don't know who these people are. They will hurt you. Are you scared for me? I asked softly. Or are you scared that the money is going to stop? There was a silence on the line, a heavy, suffocating silence that answered the question better than words could. Please, she whispered, just say you are sick. Cancel the interview. We can fix this. Dad can fix this. He can make it go away. I don't want it to go away, I said. I want it to be fixed. I hung up. I sat on my couch, shaking. For the first time, I heard real fear in her voice, but it was a selfish fear. She wasn't worried about the students breathing poison. She was worried about her bridge club status. She was worried about the country club membership. At 2:00, a knock on my door made me jump. I looked through the peephole. It was my father. He was alone. He wasn't wearing his usual suit. He was wearing a raincoat, his hair damp from the drizzle outside. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. I opened the door. May I come in? He asked. His voice lacked its usual boom. It was quiet, rough. I stepped aside. He walked into my small apartment, his eyes scanning the room. The stacks of books, the mismatched furniture, the dying fern in the corner. He had never been here before. So this is where you live, he said. This is where I live, I said. Why are you here? Dad? He turned to face me. He looked exhausted. His skin was gray, and his eyes were rimmed with red. I came to ask you to stop, he said. Mom already tried that, I said. Your mother is hysterical, he said dismissively. I am being practical. Aubrey, you are about to step into a machine that doesn't lose. Hallowmere isn't just a construction company. It is a holding company for interests that go all the way to the state capitol. You are a teacher. You are not equipped for this fight. I am equipped with the truth, I said. Graham laughed, a short, bitter bark. The truth? Aubrey, grow up. The truth is what the person with the best lawyer says it is, and they have the best lawyers. I know about the inspector, I said. Graham froze. What? Arthur Hobb, I said. I know he signed the permit 2 days before he retired. I know he moved to Boca Raton, and I know you know him. Graham's face drained of color. He walked to the window and looked out at the street. Artie, he murmured. I told him it was too fast. I told him the concrete hadn't cured. I stepped closer. You knew? You knew the building wasn't safe? He turned back to me, his eyes pleading. I sat on the advisory board. Aubrey, it was a civic duty. We wanted to revitalize the district. Hallowmere promised us a miracle, a state-of-the-art facility for half the cost. It seemed like a good deal. And when did you realize it wasn't? When the change orders started coming in, he said. Replacing copper with aluminum. Downgrading the HVAC? I asked questions. I did. I asked Marcus Vane what was going on. And what did he say? He said that if I wanted the project to finish, I had to stop reading the fine print. He said the city needed a win, not a delay. So you stayed quiet, I said, to protect your reputation. I resigned, he insisted. I stepped down from the board 3 months ago. When things felt off, I washed my hands of it. 3 months ago? I asked. Dad, the contract was awarded 6 months ago. The gala was in August. You were shaking hands with Marcus Vane in the hallway of your house. You didn't resign when it felt off. You resigned when the money was spent. Graham flinched. It is complicated. Aubrey, there are layers to this you don't understand. Favors, leverage. Did you take money? I asked. The question hung in the air between us. No, he said, but he looked away. I didn't take cash, but my firm handles the leasing for Hallowmere's commercial properties downtown. It is a lucrative account. If I had made a scene about the school, we would have lost the account. I stared at him, the man who had belittled my career for years, the man who called me lowly. He had sold out the safety of children, my students, to keep a leasing account. You traded their lungs for your commission, I said, my voice shaking with disgust. I didn't think it would be this bad, he shouted. I thought it was just cheap drywall. I didn't know about the chemicals. I didn't know about the wiring. But you knew about the inspector, I said. You knew Artie Hobb was bought. Graham slumped his shoulders. Artie was in debt, gambling. Marcus Vane paid off his debts. Artie signed the paper and left town. I found out later. And you still said nothing. I am your father, he pleaded. Doesn't that mean anything to you? If you go on that TV show and say this, if you expose the Hobb connection, the investigation will come straight to me. I was the one who recommended Artie for the job 10 years ago. They will say I was part of the payoff. Were you? No, he cried. But it will look like I was, and that is all that matters. They will destroy me. Aubrey, I will lose the firm. I will lose the house. Your mother. He reached out, trying to take my hand. I pulled away. You are asking me to choose, I said. Between you and the truth, I am asking you to choose your family, he said. Over a bunch of strangers. Those strangers are children, Dad, and they are my responsibility. Unlike you, I actually take my job seriously. Graham stared at me. The softness vanished from his face, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. If you do this, he said, his voice low, you are on your own. No money, no support. You will be dead to us. I have been dead to you for years, I said. I was just the disappointment you couldn't brag about. Now I am the liability you can't control. You are making a mistake, he said. You are just one person. You can't win. Maybe not, I said, opening the door. But I can make sure you lose. He walked out into the rain without looking back. The television studio was in downtown Larkridge, a satellite affiliate for the national network. The green room was cold and smelled of hairspray. I sat in the makeup chair while a woman aggressively powdered my nose. You're shiny, she muttered. Nerves. Yes, I said. Nerves. I checked my pocket. The micro SD card was taped to the inside of my blazer, right over my heart. The producer, Jessica, poked her head in. 5 minutes. Aubrey, remember, look at the camera, not the monitor, and keep it conversational. We love the hero angle. Right, I said. I walked onto the set. The lights were blindingly bright, hotter than I expected. I sat on a stool. An earpiece was shoved into my ear. 30 seconds, the floor manager shouted. I closed my eyes. Ice, be ice, facts, no story. In 3, 2, 1. The host's voice came through the earpiece, cheerful and polished. Joining us now from Larkridge is Aubrey Barnes, the English teacher whose quick thinking saved dozens of students during a frightening fire earlier this week. Aubrey, thank you for being here. Thank you for having me, I said. My voice was steady. It didn't sound like me. It sounded like someone else. So, Aubrey, walk us through that moment. You saw the smoke. You acted fast. It must have been terrifying. It was concerning, I said. But the fire itself was not the surprise. The surprise was that it happened in a building that is less than 3 months old. The host paused. This wasn't in the script. Right. Well, new buildings often have... This building, I interrupted politely but firmly, has had 4 documented electrical failures in 6 weeks. It has had 20 reports of chemical odors causing student illness. And it was passed by an inspector who retired 2 days after signing the occupancy permit. The host's eyes widened slightly on the monitor. Those are serious claims. Aubrey, they are not claims, I said. They are facts supported by documentation. Documentation that I have submitted to the State Office of Public Integrity as of this morning. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small black card. I held it up to the camera. It was tiny, barely visible, but I knew the lens caught it. "This card contains copies of the budget discrepancies," I said. "It contains the emails regarding the substitution of substandard ventilation units, and it contains the chain of custody for the inspection approvals." The host was listening to her earpiece now, probably hearing a producer screaming. "Aubrey, we need to be careful about legal." "I am being very careful," I said. "I am not naming the individuals involved yet. That is for the investigators. But I am stating publicly, on this national platform, that the safety of the students at Larkridge Central High has been compromised for profit, and the people who allowed it, from the contractors to the advisory board, need to be held accountable." I looked directly into the camera lens. I imagined my father sitting in his leather armchair. I imagined my mother weeping into her hands. I imagined Marcus Vane spilling his drink. "We are not just teachers," I said, "and these are not just teething pains. This is fraud, and it ends today." "Well," the host stammered, clearly trying to regain control. "Certainly a passionate perspective from a dedicated teacher. We will have to see what the district has to say about that. Aubrey Barnes, thank you for your time." The feed cut. The light on the camera went dark. The studio was silent. The floor manager looked at me with his mouth open. I pulled the earpiece out and set it on the table. "I think I am done here," I said. Across town, in the living room of the sprawling colonial house in Northgate, Graham Barnes stared at the television screen. The image of his daughter, calm and terrifyingly composed, had faded to a commercial for detergent. He held his tumbler of scotch, but he hadn't taken a sip. "She did it," Lenora whispered from the sofa. She looked pale, ghost-like. "She actually did it." Graham set the glass down. His hand was shaking. He had spent his life building walls. Walls of money, walls of influence, walls of reputation. He had thought they were impenetrable, but he had forgotten one thing. He had raised a daughter who read books about justice. He had raised a daughter who believed in things he had long ago dismissed as fairy tales, and now she had used his own tools, documents, evidence, public perception, to dismantle him. "She didn't just expose the school," Graham said, his voice hoarse. "She signaled the end." The phone on the side table began to ring. It was a harsh, shrill sound. Graham looked at the caller ID, Marcus Vane. He didn't answer it. I walked out of the studio into the cool evening air. My phone, which I had turned on as I left the building, began to vibrate. It didn't stop. It was a continuous, buzzing seizure in my hand. I looked at the screen. 500 notifications, 1,000, text messages from numbers I didn't know. "Thank you for speaking up. My son goes to that school. We are with you. You are a liar. Watch your back. Bitch, hero, traitor." I scrolled through them, feeling a strange detachment. It was done. The bomb had gone off. I looked for a message from my parents. There was nothing, no anger, no threats, just a silence that felt heavier than any scream. A news alert popped up on my screen. "Breaking, Larkridge School District announces independent review of Wellness Center, following teachers' allegations. Update, Hallowmere Development Group issues statement denying." Baseless slander. I stood on the sidewalk, the city lights blurring around me. I was alone. I had no classroom to go back to. I knew that for certain. I had no family to go home to, but for the first time in my life, the air felt clean. I buttoned my blazer, clutched my phone, and started walking toward the bus stop. The war had officially started, and I was still standing. The email arrived at 6 o'clock in the morning, a digital eviction notice delivered before the sun had fully risen. Subject, Administrative Leave/Personnel File, 8940. I sat at my kitchen table, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the screen. The language was polite, sterile, and legally bulletproof. "Dear Miss Guy Barnes, in light of the significant media attention and the need to ensure a distraction-free learning environment for our students, the district is placing you on paid administrative leave, effective immediately. This is a non-disciplinary measure intended to support staff well-being during the ongoing independent review. Please do not report to campus until further notice. It was a masterpiece of corporate gaslighting. They were not firing me. That would look like retaliation. They were protecting my well-being. They were paying me to disappear. I didn't cry. I had cried enough in the last week to fill a reservoir. Instead, I felt a cold, hollow acceptance. They wanted me out of the building because I was no longer a teacher to them. I was a contagion. I drove to the school at 7 o'clock, before the buses arrived, to collect my things. I didn't want the students to see me packing a box. I didn't want to see them. The hallway was quiet. The janitor, Mr. Henderson, was buffing the floors. He looked at me, then looked down at his machine, pretending he hadn't seen the ghost walking toward room 304. I packed quickly, my mug, the photo of my first homeroom class, the framed quote from Maya Angelou that I kept on my desk. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. I left the textbooks, I left the lesson plans, I left the stack of graded essays on the Great Gatsby. Someone else would have to explain to the juniors why Gatsby's dream was doomed from the start. As I walked out with my single cardboard box, the weight of it pressing against my chest, I saw Marin Holt standing at the end of the corridor. She was holding a coffee cup, watching me. She didn't wave. She didn't walk over to offer a comforting word or an apology. She just watched, her face a mask of tired resignation. She was the captain of a sinking ship who had decided it was safer to lock the brig than to patch the hole. I pushed through the double doors and walked into the parking lot. The wind was biting, carrying the scent of rain. I put the box in the trunk of my car and drove away, leaving 10 years of my life in the rearview mirror. 2 hours later, I was sitting in a booth at a truck stop diner 20 miles outside the city limits. The vinyl seat was cracked, and the air smelled of bacon grease and diesel. Elena Ross, the investigator from the Office of Public Integrity, sat across from me. She was younger than I expected, maybe 30, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to photograph everything they looked at. She wore a gray suit that looked out of place among the truckers and farmers. "We received the digital files," she said, her voice low. "The chain of custody is solid. You did good work." "Aubrey, is it enough?" I asked. "It is a start," she said. "The budget discrepancies are clear. The substitution of the ventilation units is fraud. Plain and simple. But we found something else." She opened her briefcase and slid a single sheet of paper across the table. It was a printout of a database log. "What is this?" I asked. "This is the intake log for the district's internal complaint system," she said. "You weren't the first person to report the smell, Aubrey, and you weren't the first to report the headaches." I scanned the list. The dates went back 4 months. August 28th, September 3rd, September 10th. "Parents?" I asked. "Parents, teachers, custodians," she confirmed. 12 separate complaints were filed through the official portal before the student collapsed. "So they ignored them," I said, feeling the anger rise again. "No," Elena said, "they didn't ignore them. Ignoring implies passivity. This was active. Look at the status column." I looked. Next to every complaint, the status read, "Closed/resolved/duplicate entry." Someone was scrubbing the log. Elena said, "Someone with administrative access was redirecting these complaints into a digital trash can before they could trigger a formal review. They were marking them as resolved without ever sending a maintenance crew." "Who?" I asked. "Who has that kind of access?" "We are tracing the IP addresses now," she said. "But whoever it is, they were protecting the timeline. They needed the building to stay open until the final state grant money cleared in October. If a safety investigation had started in September, the funding would have frozen. Money," I whispered. "It is always just money. It is $20 million. Elena said. "People have killed for less." She took the paper back. "Aubrey, I need to warn you. The state moves slowly. We are building a grand jury case. It could take 6 months before we issue indictments." "6 months?" I said. "I don't have 6 months. They are destroying the evidence now. They are intimidating witnesses." "I know," she said. But if you push too hard, too fast, you might spook them into destroying something we can't recover, or someone. What does that mean? It means you are the tip of the spear, she said, and the spear always breaks first. Keep your head down. Let us do our job. I watched her leave. She got into a generic sedan and merged onto the highway. Keep my head down. Everyone kept telling me that. Be safe. Be small. Be quiet. But I wasn't safe. And I couldn't be quiet. The next blow didn't land on me. It landed on the people I was trying to save. On Thursday afternoon, I drove to the Southside Community Center for my tutoring shift. Even though the school had banned me, the nonprofit was independent. It was my sanctuary. When I walked into the office, the director, a kind woman named Sarah, looked up from her computer. She looked panicked. "Aubrey," she said, "we have a problem." "What is it? Is it the plumbing again?" "It is the bank," she said. "I tried to run payroll this morning. I tried to pay the rent. The transactions were declined." "Declined?" I asked. "We have the grant money from the city. I called the bank." Sarah said. She turned the monitor so I could see. The account status was highlighted in red. Frozen/under review. They said our account has been flagged for suspicious activity related to a recent audit inquiry. She said, "They froze everything. We can't buy books. I can't pay the electric bill. Aubrey, if this isn't cleared by Friday, we can't open next week." I stared at the screen. Audit inquiry. It wasn't a coincidence. My name was on the board of directors for the nonprofit. It was a volunteer position, but it connected me to the account. Someone had made a phone call. Someone had tipped off a bank regulator or filed a bogus fraud report. They weren't attacking me directly. They were starving the organization I loved. They were hurting Samuel, who needed his GED. They were hurting the single mothers who came here to learn English. "This is my fault," I said, my voice shaking. "I don't understand." Sarah said, "Why would they do this?" "Because they know this is the only thing I have left." I said. I walked out of the office and sat on the curb outside. I called the bank. I spent 40 minutes on hold, listening to cheerful jazz music, only to be told by a supervisor that the review was standard procedure and could take up to 30 days. 30 days, enough to kill the program. I hung up. I felt a nausea that had nothing to do with illness. This was how they fought. They didn't punch you in the face. They suffocated you. They turned off the lights. They made you toxic to everyone around you. That evening, Tessa came to my apartment. She didn't knock. She used the spare key I gave her and walked in. I was sitting on the floor, surrounded by legal pads, trying to map out the connections Elena had shown me. Tessa stood in the doorway. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. Her eyes were rimmed with red, and she was holding a bottle of wine. "I need a drink," she said, "and I need to tell you something terrible." I scrambled up. "Tessa, what happened?" She sat on my couch and poured the wine into a water glass. Her hand was shaking. "Holt called me into her office today," she said. "With the district legal counsel." "The lawyers?" I asked. "They want my notes." "Aubrey, what notes?" "The counseling notes," she said. "Specifically for the students who reported symptoms. Leo, the girl who fainted in the library. They want to see my private session records. They can't do that." I said, "That is HIPAA. That is confidential. They are claiming it is part of the safety review," she said bitterly. "They want to prove that the students were suffering from academic anxiety or social stress. They want to build a narrative that the kids were making themselves sick because they were stressed about grades. They want to blame the victims." I said, "Yes," she said, "and they told me that if I don't hand over the files by Monday, I will be cited for non-compliance and insubordination." She took a long drink of wine. "Aubrey, if I get fired for cause, I lose my license. I lose my pension. I am 50 years old. I can't start over." I looked at my best friend. She had risked everything to get me that micro SD card. She had been my rock, and now they were crushing her to get to me. "Don't give them the notes," I said. "I have to," she whispered. "No, Tessa, if you give them the notes, they will cherry-pick every sentence where a kid mentions being tired or worried. They will spin it. You know they will." "I know," she shouted, tears spilling over. I know that. But what choice do I have? I am not you. Aubrey, I don't have a martyr complex. I have a mortgage. I have a life. The words hung in the air, sharp and stinging. Martyr complex. Is that what you think this is? I asked quietly. I don't know what to think anymore, she said, putting her head in her hands. I just know that ever since you decided to be the hero, my life has become a nightmare. I'm scared to go to work. I'm scared to answer my phone. She looked up at me, and her eyes were pleading. Please, Aubrey, just stop. Let the state handle it. Don't do anything else. If you escalate this again, they are going to destroy all of us. I didn't answer. I couldn't promise her that. Tessa stood up. She left the wine bottle on the table. I am sorry, she said. I love you, but I can't go down with you. She walked out. The door clicked shut, and the sound echoed like a gunshot in the quiet apartment. Friday morning brought the third strike. I was drinking coffee, trying to figure out how to unfreeze the nonprofit account. When my buzzer rang, it was my brother, Justin. He was wearing his running clothes, but he wasn't sweating. He looked pale, clammy. Can I come up? He asked over the intercom. I buzzed him in. Justin paced my small living room like a caged animal. He didn't sit down. I saw the news about the administrative leave. He said, Yeah, I said, they are paying me to stay home. Aubrey, he said, stopping and facing me. You have to listen to me. This isn't a game. I never thought it was a game. Justin, he ran a hand through his hair. I was at a dinner last night with the partners at my firm. One of them, he plays golf with the CEO of Hallowmere. I waited. He pulled me aside. Justin said, he asked me if we were related. When I said yes, he gave me this look. It was pity. Aubrey. He told me that the Barnes family is becoming radioactive. He said that clients are asking questions about Dad's firm, about my firm. He stepped closer. He said, Tell your sister that she is kicking a hornet's nest, and she doesn't have a suit. Is that a threat? I asked. It is a reality check, Justin shouted. He lowered his voice, looking at the door as if someone were listening. Aubrey, I thought you were just being dramatic before. I really did. But the way these people are talking, they are scared. And when people with that much money get scared, they get dangerous. They poison children. Justin, I know, he said. I know they did. And that is why you can't win. They will burn the whole city down to protect themselves. And they will start with our family. He grabbed my shoulders. His grip was tight, desperate. Dad isn't sleeping. Mom is taking Xanax just to get through the day. And my promotion is on hold. They told me they need to see how this situation resolves. I looked at him, my golden brother, the corporate star. He was terrified. I am sorry you are hurting. Justin, I said gently, I really am. But I can't stop. Why not? He pleaded. You handed over the documents. You did your part. Just walk away. Move to another city. Start over. We can help you. Dad will give you money. Just stop. I pulled away from him. If I stop now, I said, they win. They will do it again. They will build another cheap school, and another kid will get sick. And next time, maybe Leo doesn't wake up. Justin stared at me. He looked at me as if I were a stranger. You are willing to sacrifice us for this? He asked. For people you don't even know? I am willing to sacrifice the lie. I said. He nodded slowly, stepping back. Then you are on your own, he said. I can't protect you, and I won't let you drag me down. He left. I watched from the window as he ran to his car, looking over his shoulder as if the shadows were chasing him. I needed air. I needed to get away from the suffocating pressure of my own life. I walked next door to Mrs. Gable's apartment. She was sitting in her armchair, a blanket over her knees. The room smelled of lavender and dust. You look like you have been fighting a war. Dear, she said, I feel like I'm losing one. I admitted, sitting on the ottoman at her feet. She reached out and patted my hand. Her skin was like parchment paper, dry and fragile. I saw you on the television, she said. You were very brave. I was terrified. I said, "And now everyone is angry. My family, my friends, they all want me to stop. Because the truth is inconvenient." She said, "It always is." She pointed to the antique secretary desk in the corner. "Open the bottom drawer. Aubrey, bring me the blue box." I walked over and opened the drawer. Inside was a faded blue shoebox, tied with a ribbon. I brought it to her. She untied the ribbon with trembling fingers. "Your Aunt Bee and I were great friends. You know," she said, "we wrote to each other every week for 30 years. She kept everything. When she passed, your uncle gave me this box. He said he didn't want to read them. Too painful." She pulled out a bundle of letters, bound with a rubber band. "I was reading through them last night," she said, "remembering the old days, and I found this." She handed me a single envelope. It was postmarked October, 15 years ago. The handwriting on the front was familiar. Heavy, bold strokes. It was my father's handwriting. "But this is from Graham," I said. "Read it," she commanded. I opened the letter. It was written on his firm's stationery. "Dear B, I hope this finds you well. Things are chaotic here. The new development downtown is pushing forward, and the pressure to get the school modernization bond on the ballot is immense. I did a favor today that sits poorly with me. Marcus needed an introduction to the zoning board, and I made the call. I know the land they want is unstable, swampy, terrible drainage, but the money behind this is too big to ignore. I feel like I am selling pieces of the city I promised to protect. But Lenora says we have to look at the long game. The commission on the leasing rights alone will secure the beach house. Sometimes I wonder if the price of admission to this life is your conscience, love, Graham." I stared at the paper, 15 years ago. He knew. He knew back then that Hallowmere was building on bad land. He knew the foundation was corrupt from the very beginning, and he did it anyway. For the beach house. "This isn't just about the wellness wing," I whispered. "This goes back to the beginning." Mrs. Gable nodded. "Your father is not a monster, Aubrey, but he is a man who made a deal with the devil a long time ago, and now the bill is due. Keep it," she said. "I think you need it more than I do." I drove to the colonial house in Northgate. I didn't call first. My mother opened the door. She looked frail. Her perfect hair was slightly disheveled. "Aubrey," she said, blocking the doorway. "You shouldn't be here. Your father is—" I pushed past her. "Where is he?" "He is at the office," she said, trying to salvage what is left of his reputation. I walked into the kitchen. The marble counters were spotless. The vase of fresh lilies was perfect. It was a beautiful stage set for a play that was turning into a tragedy. I put the letter on the counter. "Read this," I said. Lenora looked at the letter. She didn't pick it up. She recognized it. "Where did you get this?" she asked, her voice a whisper. "Aunt Bee kept it," I said. She closed her eyes. "Bee never threw anything away. You knew." I said, "It wasn't just Dad. You knew." "Lenora says we have to look at the long game." That is what he wrote. Lenora gripped the edge of the counter. Her knuckles were white. "You don't understand," she said. "You were in college. Justin was in private school. The tuition, the mortgage. We were stretched thin. Aubrey, your father had a chance to get in on the ground floor of the biggest development deal in the city's history. So you told him to ignore the swamp." I said, "You told him to ignore the bad land. I told him to provide for his family," she snapped, opening her eyes. "And he did. Everything you have. Your education, your safety, your freedom to be a lowly teacher. It was all paid for by those deals." "My freedom?" I laughed, a harsh sound that hurt my throat. "You call this freedom? You trapped me in a life built on fraud, and when I tried to fix it, you told me to shut up. We were protecting you." She said, "No." I said, "You were protecting the status. You were protecting the parties and the bridge club and the illusion that we are better than everyone else." I looked at my mother. I saw the fear in her eyes, but I also saw the calculation. She was still trying to figure out how to spin this, how to survive it. "I am taking this," I said, picking up the letter. "Aubrey, please," she begged. "If you release that, It proves premeditation. It proves he knew the site was bad. He could go to prison. Then maybe he should. I said, I walked out. She screamed my name, but I didn't turn around. The umbilical cord was finally cut. That night, the news alert flashed across my phone. Larkridge School District and Hallowmere Development Group to host televised town hall on school safety. It was a PR stunt. They were going to put Marcus Vane and Dr. Aris on stage. They would have pre-screened questions. They would have charts and graphs showing that the air quality was within acceptable limits. They would control the narrative. I wasn't invited. In fact, I was explicitly banned from campus, and the town hall was being held in the school auditorium. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Jessica, the producer from the morning show. Jessica, are you watching the news? Aubrey, yes, it is a sham. Jessica, it is only a sham if they control the mic. I am producing the segment for the local affiliate. I can get you in. Aubrey, I am banned from the building. Jessica, I have a press pass with your name on it. Wear a hat. Sit in the third row. Left side. I will make sure the floor mic comes to you. But Aubrey, you only get one shot. If you start speechifying, they will cut the audio. You need a question that hits them so hard they can't get up. I looked at the text. I looked at the blue shoebox on my table. I looked at the micro SD card. I looked at the old letter. I had the evidence. I had the motive. I had the history. I spent the next hour writing. I didn't write a speech. I wrote a question. I wrote it on the back of a grading rubric. I crossed out words. I simplified. I sharpened it until it was a blade. Ice. Be ice. I put on a black coat and a beanie hat. I put the letter in my pocket. I put the micro SD card in my bra. I drove to the school. The parking lot was full. News vans, police cars, parents. I walked to the side entrance where the press were gathering. Jessica was there. She slipped a laminate badge around my neck. Don't say a word until the mic is in your hand, she whispered. I nodded. I walked into the auditorium. The air was warm and smelled of floor wax and anticipation. I found the third row. I pulled my hat down low. On the stage, the lights were blindingly bright. Marcus Vane sat in the center, looking confident, polished. Dr. Aris sat next to him. My principal, Marin Holt, sat on the end, looking at her shoes. The moderator, a local news anchor, walked to the podium. Good evening, everyone, he said. We are here to have an open, honest conversation about the future of our schools. I sat in the dark, my heart beating a slow, heavy rhythm. They thought they had won. They thought they had silenced the teacher, bought off the inspector, and scared the family into submission. They didn't know that the lowly teacher was sitting 20 feet away, holding the match that would burn their house of cards to the ground. I waited. The auditorium was a pressure cooker of body heat and skepticism. I sat in the third row, the brim of my knit hat pulled low, listening to the hum of the ventilation system, the very system that had poisoned my students. On stage, the production was slick. Behind Marcus Vane and Dr. Aris was a massive screen displaying bar graphs in soothing shades of blue and green. The title of the slide was Air Quality Compliance, Exceeding Standards. Marcus Vane leaned into his microphone. He looked the part of the benevolent builder. His suit was impeccable, his silver hair catching the stage lights. We understand the anxiety, he said, his voice a warm, reassuring rumble. When we build for the future, there are always adjustment periods. But let me be clear, at no point were your children in danger. The smells reported were merely curing agents from the eco-friendly floor sealant. It is the smell of modernization. A few people in the audience nodded. He was good. He made poison sound like progress. Jessica, the producer who had sneaked me in, was crouching in the aisle 3 feet away. She caught my eye. She tapped her wrist. Now, the moderator, a local news anchor named Tom, looked at his cue card. We have time for a few questions from the community. Let's go to the microphone in the center aisle. A plant. A woman I recognized as the secretary of the PTA, who always sided with the administration, stood up and started walking to the mic. I didn't wait. I stood up. I took off my hat. I didn't walk to the center aisle. I stood right where I was, in the third row, creating a disruption in the visual field of the cameras. A ripple of recognition moved through the room like a cold wind. Heads turned. A whisper started, low and urgent. Is that her? It is the teacher. It is Aubrey Barnes. The cameraman on the jib saw me. He swung the boom arm around. Abandoning the PTA secretary, the lens focused on me. I saw the red tally light blink on. Tom, the moderator, froze. He looked at his earpiece, listening to a director screaming instructions. I see we have a faculty member in the audience. Tom stammered. Ms. Barnes, we were under the impression you were not attending tonight. I am on leave. Tom, I said. My voice was loud, projected from the diaphragm, filling the silence without a microphone. But I am still a citizen of Larkridge, and I have a question. I stepped over the legs of the person next to me and moved to the edge of the row. Jessica was there, holding a wireless stick microphone. She shoved it into my hand. Ms. Barnes, Marcus Vane said from the stage. His smile didn't waver, but his eyes went flat and hard. We are happy to address concerns, but we want to make sure we give parents a chance to speak first. I am speaking for the parents who were lied to. I said into the mic. The audio system boomed my voice through the hall. The murmurs stopped instantly. Mr. Vane, I said, holding up the blue file folder I had brought with me. You just stated that the building passed all safety inspections with flying colors. That is correct, Vane said smoothly. It is a matter of public record. I opened the folder. Then can you explain why the final occupancy permit for the East Wing was signed on August 12th by Senior Inspector Arthur Hobb? Vane blinked. August 12th is the date of completion. Yes. And are you aware, I continued, my eyes flicking down to the paper, that Arthur Hobb's state credential was flagged for administrative review on August 10th, 2 days prior, due to financial irregularities, and that he retired and moved to Florida on August 14th, 48 hours after signing off on a $20 million project? The room went dead silent. Vane shifted in his seat. Personnel matters regarding county inspectors are outside my purview, Vane said, his voice losing a fraction of its warmth. We rely on the city to provide qualified officials. Let's talk about the city then, I said. I turned my gaze to Dr. Aris, superintendent. I said, you claimed in your press release that the complaints about the chemical odors were sudden and isolated to the week of the collapse. That is what our logs show. Yes, Dr. Aris said, adjusting his glasses. I pulled the second sheet of paper from the folder. Then why do I have a printout of the district's internal facilities database showing 12 separate complaints filed between August 28th and September 10th? Complaints filed by 2 custodians, a librarian, and 9 parents. Doctor. Aris went pale. I am not aware of those specific. You aren't aware because they were marked as resolved within minutes of being submitted. I said, they were routed into a closed channel to prevent a safety audit. Who ordered those complaints to be buried? Dr. Aris, was it you? Or was it someone telling you that an audit would freeze the state grant money? Dr. Aris looked at Vane. Vane looked at the moderator. This is an ambush, Vane said, leaning back, and it is based on stolen, unverified data. I am not going to sit here and debate conspiracy theories with a disgruntled employee who is currently under investigation for misconduct. He stood up, buttoning his jacket. We are done here, Vane said. He signaled to his team. Sit down. Mr. Vane. The voice didn't come from me. It came from the back of the room. Elena Ross, the investigator from the Office of Public Integrity, stood up. She was wearing her gray suit, and she held up a leather badge wallet. I am Elena Ross, state investigator, she announced, her voice cutting through the tension. And Ms. Barnes is correct. Vane froze. He stared at the back of the room. We have authenticated the database logs, Elena continued, walking down the center aisle, and as of 5 o'clock this evening, my office has expanded the inquiry to include bid rigging and obstruction of justice. We are seizing the district servers tonight. The room erupted. Parents jumped to their feet. Reporters began shouting questions. The camera swung wildly from me to Elena to the stage. Vane looked like a trapped animal. "Doctor?" Aris put his head in his hands. I stood there in the chaos, the microphone still in my hand, feeling the adrenaline vibrate in my fingertips. I had lit the fuse. "We are going to commercial," the floor director screamed. "Cut the feed! Cut it!" The stage lights dimmed, but the house lights came up. The noise in the room was deafening. Jessica grabbed my arm. That was incredible. She shouted over the noise, "Come with me. Backstage. Now. Before the mob swarms you." She pulled me toward the side curtains. I followed her, my heart hammering. We ducked behind the heavy black velvet drapes and into the wings. The backstage area was a tangle of cables and panicked production assistants. "Aubrey." The voice was breathless. Panicked. I turned. My father was running toward me from the loading dock entrance. Graham Barnes looked like a man who had run through a hurricane. His raincoat was soaked. His hair was plastered to his forehead. He was gasping for air. His face a terrifying shade of gray. "Dad?" I said. He grabbed my shoulders. His hands were wet and shaking. "You have to stop," he wheezed. "You have to stop right now." "How are you here?" I asked. "I was watching," he said. "I saw you. I saw the investigator. Aubrey, listen to me. I drove here. I ran the red lights. You cannot go back out there." "Why?" I asked, pulling away from him. "Because I am embarrassing you? Because you are going to put me in prison," he hissed. He looked around to make sure no one was listening. The production crew was too busy dealing with the fallout on stage to notice us. Graham backed me into a corner, behind a stack of road cases. "I need to speak to them," he said. "I need to speak to the investigator. Off the record." "There is no off the record anymore." "Dad?" "Yes, there is," he insisted, his eyes wide and desperate. "I can correct the record. I can tell them I made the introductions. I can tell them I signed the letter of support for the bond measure. I can admit to negligence." "Negligence?" I repeated. "I facilitated the meeting between Marcus and the zoning board." He admitted. The words tumbled out of him fast, like vomit. "I vouched for Hallowmere. I told the city council that they were solid, and when I saw the change orders, when I saw they were using the cheap concrete, I didn't report it. I just resigned. You let them build it." I said, "You knew the foundation was bad 15 years ago, and you still let them build the school on top of it. I didn't think they would use toxic materials," he pleaded. "I thought they would just cut corners on the finishes." "Aubrey, if you go back out there and connect me to this, if you tell them I was the advisor, they will charge me as a co-conspirator." He grabbed my hand. He squeezed it so hard it hurt. "I am your father," he whispered. "I paid for your degree. I paid for your car. I have loved you every day of your life. Don't destroy me. Let me go to the investigator quietly. Let me make a deal. Please, don't say my name on television." I looked at him. I saw the man who had taught me to tie my shoes. I saw the man who had sat in the front row of my college graduation, but I also saw the man who had called my career lowly. I saw the man who had prioritized a beach house over the safety of a city. I saw the man who had watched my students get sick and told me to shut up because it was dramatic. He wanted a private apology. He wanted to handle this like a gentleman, in a quiet room with lawyers, where he could spin the narrative. He wanted to be the tragic victim of a bad partner, not the architect of the disaster. If I stayed quiet, he would survive. He would pay a fine. He would retire in shame, but he would be free, and the story would become about Marcus Vane and a few bad inspectors. The system that allowed it, the network of donors and handshakes, would remain intact. But if I spoke... I looked at the monitor mounted on the wall. The commercial break was counting down. 10 seconds to air. "I am sorry." "Dad," I said. He looked at me with hope. "You will stop?" I pulled my hand away from his. "No," I said. "I am sorry that you made this choice." I turned and walked back toward the curtain. "Aubrey!" he screamed. "Aubrey, don't you dare!" I stepped through the curtain and back onto the stage. The lights came up. The audience was still buzzing. but they hushed as I walked to the microphone stand in the center of the stage. The moderator looked terrified, but he didn't stop me. He knew this was the only reason people were watching. "We are back," the floor director shouted. "Live in 3, 2, 1. I looked into the camera. I didn't look at Marcus Vane. I didn't look at Dr. Eris. I looked at the red light. I knew my father was watching from the wings. I knew my mother was watching from home. "Mr. Vane refused to answer who authorized the shortcuts. I said, my voice steady, "He calls it a conspiracy theory, but corruption is rarely a conspiracy of strangers. It is usually a conspiracy of friends." I took a breath. The air in the room felt electric. The reason Halomir Development Group was awarded this contract without a competitive bid is not a clerical error. I said, "It was the result of a coordinated effort by the Citizens Advisory Board, and I am disclosing now, for the public record, that a key member of that board, a man who personally vouched for Halomir's stability and facilitated the zoning approvals, despite knowing the land was compromised, is my father, Graham Barnes." A gasp went through the room, louder than before. It was a physical sound, a collective intake of breath. "He is here tonight," I continued, my voice never wavering. Though my knees felt like water, he is backstage, and he has expressed a willingness to provide testimony regarding the specific dates and meetings where the safety of our students was traded for political favors. I looked at the camera lens, and I spoke directly to him. "The truth is not a negotiation," I said. "It is the only thing we have left." The studio exploded. Reporters surged forward. The moderator was shouting for order. Marcus Vane stood up and knocked his chair over. Storming off the stage, I stood there for 1 second longer. I felt a profound, shattering grief. I had just nuked my own family. I had just made myself an orphan in every way that mattered. But then I saw Elena Ross in the aisle. She nodded to me. A slow, solemn nod. The floor director made a slashing motion across his throat. "Cut! Go to black! We are out!" The chaos after the broadcast was a blur. Security guards formed a ring around me, not to arrest me, but to keep the press away. They hustled me out a side door, away from the backstage area where I could hear a man shouting, my father, arguing with the investigator. I walked out into the cold night air of the parking lot. It was raining now, a steady, freezing drizzle that soaked through my blazer instantly. My phone was vibrating against my ribs. It felt like a living thing, thrashing in my pocket. I pulled it out. The screen was a waterfall of notifications. "Justin, you are dead to us. Do not ever come near this family again. Mom, how could you?" Unknown number. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. Student: "Miss Barnes, is it true? Did your dad do it?" Tessa: "I am crying. You did it. You actually did it." I turned the phone off. I walked to my car. My old, rattling sedan. It looked small and sad under the streetlights. I got in and sat in the silence. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't put the key in the ignition. I gripped the steering wheel and just breathed. I would never teach in Larkridge again. I knew that. The union wouldn't be able to save me. The district would settle the lawsuits. But I would be the woman who destroyed the peace. I would be the whistleblower who ate her own young. But then I looked at the passenger seat. The blue shoebox was there. The micro SD card was in my pocket. I had saved the next Leo. I had saved the next school. And somewhere, in the cloud of digital noise, my literacy nonprofit was trending. I didn't need to check to know that the donations were pouring in. The people who saw me tonight didn't see a traitor. They saw someone who finally told them the truth. I started the car. It sputtered, then roared to life. I didn't know where I was going. Maybe to a hotel, maybe to the next town. But as I pulled out of the lot, leaving the news vans and the shouting and the wreckage of my family behind me, I realized something. I wasn't small anymore. I drove into the dark, and for the first time in 34 years, the road ahead was wide open. Thank you. Truly. Thank you for taking this journey with Aubrey Barnes. Writing this story was an exercise in walking the fine line between justice and loyalty. and I hope you felt the weight of every choice she had to make. Revenge isn't always about destroying an enemy. Sometimes, it's about destroying the silence that protects them. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Are you tuning in from a bustling city like Larkridge, or somewhere quiet? Please leave a comment below sharing your location and your thoughts on the ending. Did Aubrey make the right choice? Or was the cost too high? If you enjoyed this deep dive into family secrets and systemic corruption, please consider subscribing to Revenge Stories. We have many more tales of justice, betrayal, and redemption waiting for you. Until next time, keep your eyes open and trust your gut.